Stephens.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. What a fascinating 60 days it has been. Is that we were told 60 days ago by honourable members opposite that they welcomed the former Chancellor's fiscal event and statement. In fact, they were shouting more, as I recall, 60 days ago, shouting more. They were then demanding, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the Scottish Parliament follow suit and that the Scottish Parliament should pass on the tax cuts that they were introducing. So risible, it is incredible. And now they welcome this statement, 60 days later, a completely different U-turn entirely. But I want to, Mr Deputy Speaker, speak firstly on whether this particular autumn statement benefits the wealthy or benefits the poorest. And I think the key test of that is found in the two books. And that is the OBR when they question the government on its compliance measures from DWP and HMRC that raise £2.8 billion a year by 2027-28. And the Green Book tells us that of that £2.28 billion, £2.2 billion will be chasing social security fraud and error. So that means, by my sums, Mr Deputy Speaker, that 0.6 is being used to chase tax avoidance and evasion. What a timid way of dealing with tax avoidance and evasion, estimated by the Tax Justice Network and PCS at £70 billion. So less than a hundredth, Mr Deputy Speaker, the government seeks to recoup on tax avoidance and evasion. Really couldn't make it up. Mr Deputy Speaker, that the tax avoiders and the evaders, what message it's sending to them that they're only going to be spending so much and seem that they can recoup so little of those. And I'll give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he agree that it's the oil giants like Shell and BP and the FTSE 100 bosses recording record profits and pay rises who should be shouldering the burden of this Chancellor's austerity budget, not our constituents who are struggling to make ends meet in a cost of living crisis? I
thank my honourable friend for making that point, because we should be looking at an excess profit tax across the board, because it's quite right to mention the oil and gas companies, but they're not the only ones who've benefited from the pandemic. I mean, we now seem to be getting told by the government when it comes to tax avoidance and evasion that somehow disappeared during the pandemic is the only conclusion you can reach when you look at these figures in these documents, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I think that adding on to that, talking about energy, is that there doesn't seem to be any attempt from the government to discuss how we tackle energy prices and the very real perception that people have out there that the regulators are on the side of the energy companies and not the consumers, because that's exactly what people in the streets believe that when they're talking about energy. And I think that we should start giving the regulators a bit more teeth and encourage them to use their powers and to go after the energy companies who are making these excess profits, but also to bring prices down for consumers, because that is what has to happen. And I'll give way to honourable.
Grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and he's making a powerful point about energy costs and the absolutely crushing effect they're having on families and communities just now. Does he agree with me that one of the other things that should happen is that there should be regulation of off-gas grid supplies as well, because for too long they've been ignored and they're paying substantially more for the costs of heating their homes than those on the gas grid?
No, I do agree with my honourable friend, and he made some powerful points earlier on this very issue about the costs, as did the member from the DUP who also made that point, because poverty across the UK is a very real issue. It's not just an urban issue, it's a rural issue, and it affects all the communities across these islands in terms of tackling poverty. And now, as much as I welcome the fact that benefits were uprated in line with inflation, that has always been regarded as a political fact, Mr Deputy Speaker, that should happen anyway. So we shouldn't really give any kudos to the government for just following what should take place, and that is that uprating should take place with inflation. But as the honourable member for Bradford East mentioned, food inflation is up by 16%, and what we're seeing is a rise, as he rightly argued, of food banks but also the next level above that, and that's affordable food projects. We're seeing pantries and larders in many of our communities opening up to try and help people move away from these food banks, and there's many projects that I'm involved in Glasgow South West to help people do that.
On that point,
well, I'll give way in a second, because I do want to talk about poverty and the Department of Work and Pensions, of which I'm on the Select Committee, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Department of Work and Pensions is closing offices. It's actually now laying off its workers. Incredibly. The department responsible for employment and social security is saying to its own workforce, you are no longer required because it's closing offices. That is an absolutely risible position. And it's even more risible, Mr Deputy Speaker, when they refuse those people who are under threat of redundancy home working. Now, one of the things that did work during the pandemic was that people were working from home. And that actually helped people get into the workplace. We've seen in an exchange I had with a right honourable member earlier that when you encourage home working, you encourage people into work and into paid employment. And it just seems daft that we have government departments telling their own workforce, come into the office, come into these workplaces, but you can't work from home. And so there has to be a bit more creativity, I think, from the government if they are serious about dealing with long-term employment and turning around people's lives and getting them into work, because it just seems completely contradictory that they say to their own workforce, you can't work from home. It really is completely and utterly risible position that they find themselves in. I hope the Minister will answer the question of the 6,000 additional employees the state is going to employ between DWP and HMRC, what the ratio is. Because I'm guessing, I'm going to use an educated guess, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the overwhelming majority of the 6,000 will end up in the Department of Work and Pensions chasing social security fraud and error, and not HMRC to tackle tax avoidance and evasion. And the last point I want to make, Mr Deputy Speaker, is there was nothing in the budget about public sector pay policy. We have seen so many workers who have taken the view and that they have no other alternative than to withdraw their labour because of the pay offers and the low pay offers that they're getting from employers, including many in the public sector. The overwhelming majority of civil servants are not covered by pay review bodies, and yet we do not know, Mr Deputy Speaker, what the government's policy around public sector pay is at the moment, because public sector workers use their money and spend that money into the economy, and there could be an economic boost if you give public sector workers the pay rise that they deserve. I hope that we will get an answer to that, Mr Deputy Speaker, because public sector workers deserve better than what this government is treating them as going forward. And I'll leave my remarks there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.